Kenya is about to cut the pay of top government officials, including the president and lawmakers. And with just weeks to go before elections in August, the decision is expected to be welcomed by Kenyans who have been protesting over wages for months. Let's have a look at the details. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission says members of parliament who are among the world's highest paid lawmakers would now earn around $72,000 a year. That is 12.5% less than before. The president's salary will be cut by 13% to $166,000 annually. That plan is backed by President Uhuru Kenyatta himself, who is seeking re-election. An IMF study from 2013 says Kenyan politicians made 76 times the country's per capita GDP. The cuts are expected to save the country's economy around $82 million annually and improve public services. Government salaries currently use up half of all revenues. And TRT World's Africa reporter Fidelis Mbah is here. Great to have you with us as always, Fidelis. Now, it sounds like a great place to be a politician. And the main reason, I presume, for such high salaries is to cut down on corruption. But that hasn't really worked in Kenya's case, has it?
Well, if you're talking about cutting down on corruption, the salary on paper really doesn't really, to some extent, reflect how much these people make, because we're talking about a case of them, the allowances are not even mentioned, because like the Salary Commission was talking about, they said one of the reasons they were giving was that some of them come up with all sorts of fictitious quotations for allowances, asking for things that are not even budgeted for. So beyond this salary, which is even basic, their basic salary, then if you look at the allowance, that's where they make the money. And then if you're talking about them curbing corruption, but then they use their influence as lawmakers to lobby to help people, and they're still making money from. So I don't think just cutting the salary is actually an end itself to curbing corruption, especially at that level of government.
Well, no, but that's a good point. I mean, but presumably, if you're earning less money, which is what these new moves are planning on doing, couldn't that make corruption actually worse in Kenya?
Well, like I did mention, they still have their means of making money, even though the lawmakers are saying that that their constituents actually depend on them for financial contributions, for support and all that, and that there's no need to cut their salary. But then, they still have their way. But if you look at it from their own point again, they spend so much to get into office. In most countries in Africa, unlike in developed countries where you have people supporting you, contributing to your campaign fund, in Africa, mostly it's people who generate this money themselves. So you take all your hard earnings over the years to campaign for office. And when you get there, at least you're expecting, to some extent, return on investment, because they're not going there to, they're not running a charity per se.
Right. Now, Nigeria also has some very highly paid politicians. Yeah. Of course, the corruption is rampant in Nigeria as well, as we know. But how does having salaries that high affect the Nigerian economy?
It has not in any way, helped the economy. Even what the Kenyans are doing, it's even a joke compared to what happens in Nigeria. I give you some, statistics. They get a hardship allowance of 50% of the basic salary as hardship allowance, constituency allowance 200% of the basic salary. Even for them to buy newspapers, they get 50% of their basics. We're talking about annual salary in this case, to buy newspapers to read. And when they're leaving office, they get a generous pay of 300% of their annual salary as thank you for serving. So even at that, you see people go to present, like those, especially when ministries come to present annual budget, you see these people more like making demands from government officials. There have been allegations that they actually demanded bribes to be able to pass the budget for various ministries. So it's actually something that's why you see there's so much desperation by many people to get into office, because they feel once you become an MP, almost like your financial problems are over.
And conversely, probably not much incentive to go into the private sector either. We're going to have to leave it there, though. Fidelis Mbah, thank you so much.